Is racism inherently traumatic? A macroaggression, a microaggression, racial abuse? How do we think about this?
Yeah, so really great and astute reflections, especially those of you who highlighted Resmaa Menakem's thinking that there's no such thing as a microaggression. So in EFT, it's so subjective. And Jen, as you and I have talked about many, many times over with trauma, you added to Peter Levine's definition of trauma is how alone did a person feel? I, as a clinician, don't pretend to know I know what's traumatic for anybody. So I have to remain in that not knowing stance. And I feel the best use of me is to provide and create safe space for that exploration. And so I try and I ask myself not to make meaning about what was traumatic or not. It's so subjective. We know, though, and we're learning more and more how systematic racism is. And so with our increased knowledge and awareness, I probably would default to, I have to wonder about this as the timing is right, as I have rapport, as we have safety, as it's relevant to the clinical treatment process. I can wonder about it, but I can't ask myself to know. I can't let myself believe I know about somebody else's experience. And so whatever their words fit, whether it's a macroaggression or racial profiling or racial trauma, I'm also in the midst of taking Ken Hardy's weekend course on racial trauma. And one of his main points from this past Saturday is it's unnamed. Mm-hmm. And because it's gone unnamed for decades and generations and eons, it's unarticulated, it's unspoken, it's that subtle, unspoken devaluation of a human's experience. And so in a way, I feel like the more I learn about racial trauma, the more I realize we don't know and I don't know. Mm. And so anytime we don't know, or I don't know, I know my job is to hold space for safe exploration. Mm. And I ask my cognitive part of my brain not to try to label it profiling, trauma, macroaggression. What might my brain want to name it to make it less messy? But the reality is we're all learning to tolerate the messiness and not knowing, because that is where curiosity allows for the most safe exploration, which is what I hope to provide for my clients.
Yeah, great. It's really being able to be humble and receptive and to listen deeply and get attuned to the experience of our client.
The meaning making is risky business.
Yeah.
And that's where I ask myself to stay away from the labeling, stay away from determining somebody else's experience, but be informed enough to know when to slow the process down, increase safety, and make space to explore.
So I guess what I'm understanding, and this is the next part of this question, do you treat racial trauma the same way you treat other kinds of trauma?
I don't know. It really depends on the presentation and it really depends on the person's experience. And
can I think out loud? And I'm just thinking out loud here. Yeah. But often when we're talking about trauma, it's something from the past. It was when the person was a child, they had a traumatic event or several traumatic events. And so we're processing that and looking back. But in terms of racial trauma, if you are Black and live in America, it's ongoing. I guess to me, my brain says that may be a difference.
Maybe a difference. Yeah, it's a really interesting thought and an apt thought. And right then, Jen, is a lovely example of just how we have to make space for each person's experience, how your thought just came alive. And that's so relevant for you. That fits for me too. If this fits for us as a group of learners, as a community of learners, anytime we collectively are in the unknown or individually in the unknown, we often want to simplify information so we feel a little bit more competent than maybe I feel right now. And I just know I have to tolerate not feeling competent and not knowing.
Right.
And so that's when I just coach myself through to stay open, to stay limbically open. Your good word, receptive. Humility, cultural humility is my new frame in my mind, culturally attuned, and to just stay really open to not knowing and to be able to explore together.
Yeah. And as we've talked about before, it takes a willingness to be uncomfortable and not know the answers. Most of us like to have the answers. And so, yeah.
Yeah, that cognitive part of our brain that isn't sure what to do when it doesn't know what's next.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we have to reassure ourselves bottom up experientially, even though I don't know what's next. Here I am in ideally a safe environment. I know enough to create safe space. I know enough to structure a process for the client's exploration and their benefit.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's the only thing I know. And I distill down to that's what I know in this moment. That's what I know to do. And so when I'm afraid, I don't know what to do next. I said it yesterday to a client, and I just said, I don't know what to do right now. I don't know what to do. I don't know what the next best move is. I don't want to ask each of you to do something that you've just told me your nervous systems can't do right now. And we just paused, and I took a big, deep breath, and I was like, I'm not sure what to do next.
And then if you can just be still and receptive in that place of not knowing, instead of immediately filling it, something will occur to you to do.
Will.
Or something will happen.
Something will happen. Something will occur. Something will happen. Exactly. We grow into EFT and we're taught, and ideally we trust EFT. Those quiet moments, I have to trust the process, which feels bigger than EFT. I have to trust the process of humanistic experiential therapy.
Yeah.
And to not be somewhere other than where I am, which is, I'm not sure what to do next.
Yeah.
Even a little bit of water comes to my eyes, even now, thinking about last night's session. I'm not sure what to do next. Oh, it's vulnerable.
It's so vulnerable, but you're the expert.
On some things and not on others.
Right? Of course. For more hot tips on emotionally focused therapy, go to theeftcafe.com and sign up for our newsletter where you will receive short little clips like the one you just watched.